while the other organization essentially have a need to have machine learning in a hybrid environment. For example, they have data in cloud, and then they wanted to leverage powerful cloud computer to train model in cloud. And after model is trained, they wanted to deploy model to on-premises for latency and security requirement. Vice versa, some customer wants to train model on premises and then deploy model to cloud for broader service access. Lastly, organization usually has a portion of machine learning requiring total confidentiality. And in this case, they wanted to have a full machine learning lifecycle on premises. Azure Arc enabled machine learning address all these customer needs well. With a simple Azure ML extension deployment, customer gets all existing Azure ML tools for full machine learning lifecycle, and then they have access to Azure Managed Compute and Customer Managed Kubernetes Compute. So now they can do machine learning anywhere to meet their business needs.
So that's great, right? Because so many people are already doing that, right? They have their data on premise and they don't necessarily want to change what they're doing. And we're kind of going and meeting their needs instead of expecting them to come our way. So that's really great. So who is this feature for? Who's going to be using this?
Azure Arc enabled machine learning is intended for customers' machine learning infrastructure. The team usually is responsible for setting up a Kubernetes cluster and enable Kubernetes cluster for the data science team to use. So the data science team can focus on building quality model and put a model into production without getting involved into too much details about Kubernetes.
I identify as a developer more than as an IT pro, and as a developer, I like that.
Yes.
That somebody else has all the tools to make my life easier, right? So that's all great, but I want to see a demo, and I think people watching want to see a demo too. Can you show us a demo?
Great, yeah, definitely. Let me have the screen here. So enable an existing cluster to have Azure Machine Learning is very easy. It's about like a 4-step. So the first step is connect. You connect the existing cluster to Kubernetes. And then the second step is deploy Azure ML extension. And then the third step, basically you attach Kubernetes cluster to Azure Machine Learning workspace. And then you create a computer target to be used for data science team. And the last step is basically data science team use the computer target. So let me show how easy it is to done this 4-step. So here is a cluster that I have on my desktop. So it's a Docker desktop Kubernetes cluster. So I can run a simple command. So AZ connect, and then connect my desktop cluster, Kubernetes cluster to Azure Cloud, okay? So while it's connecting, so I have already a cluster that is connected to Azure Cloud already. So the second step is about deploy Azure ML extension. So you can run a simple CLI command and then deploy Azure ML extension to a cluster that is already connected. So let me run this extension command. Now, while these both CL commands are running, we can head over to the Azure portal to see an Azure Arc Connect cluster, which is already connected, and then with the extension deployed. So I have a cluster on premise. So this is AKS on Azure Stack HCI cluster on premises, and outer is connected to Azure Cloud, is showing as Kubernetes Azure Arc. And then the resource is created in cloud. And then I also have extension deployed. So you can see the extension is deployed here. So this is the Azure ML extension, right? Microsoft Azure ML Kubernetes extension. This is installed. So we can see some properties of this Azure ML extension. So you can see here, I have enabled a cluster for training and also for inference. So which means I can use this Kubernetes cluster to train a model or deploy a model on this cluster. Now let's say the cluster is already deployed with the Azure ML extension. So I wanted to basically deploy a model. Okay, so I can easily use CLI command to deploy a model. So here's a project that I have. So it's an image classification model. It's already trained, and I want to deploy the model to Azure Cloud using basically the new Azure Arc enabled model deployment capability, safe rollout with blue and green deployment. I have an YAML, endpoint YAML file, which basically it will create, running a CL command with this endpoint YAML, it will create an endpoint. And then it uses the computer targeted Azure ML AI show. Yeah. And I also have a blue deployment YAML. And so this will create a blue deployment first. So let me first basically run a command to create the endpoint. So this will create the endpoint. Actually, we missed a step. So in earlier, so after extension in deployment, the third step is about attach the computer target. So we attach and create a computer target. So while the computer target is running, I can go to the directory. Now I can create an endpoint. Okay, so let me now with this simple CLI command, I can create an endpoint. So endpoint is creating, and I can, with endpoint is being created. So I can head over to the portal to see the endpoint here. See, this is the endpoint just being created. Okay, the endpoint creation is done. Now I can create a blue deployment. So blue deployment take time. So let's head over to Azure Studio portal again. So I will show an already existing endpoint, the AI show endpoint, and it has the blue deployment already created. Now we have blue deployment with 100% traffic. I wanted to create another deployment called green deployment. And this green deployment so I have a new green deployment, and then with specifying instance type, which is using a big CPU instance. My original blue deployment, the traffic is not meeting requirement. Now I wanted to change using a big CPU instance type so I can handle more traffic. And so let me start creating a green deployment using a simple CLI command.
So you're going to have one endpoint with two deployments, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. A blue and a green deployment.
Mm-hmm.
And all running on your local Kubernetes.
Yes. And then, so this is running on on-premise cluster. So now it's creating the green deployment. So let's head over to the portal to see this green deployment in action. So if I refresh, we'll see the green deployment is being created.
Mm-hmm.
And this will be very quick. And then we also see the notification here. So while it's being created,
that's awesome.
and then after this is created, we can change the traffic using this endpoint UI also. So it should be very quick to create a green deployment. Creating green deployment, so
can you just show us the command of how that would be updated? Oh, it
okay.
just finished. Okay,
now,
great.
Now say I wanted to update the traffic, okay? Mm-hmm. I can use CLI, but in this case, I prefer to use UI. So let me see, I wanted to go with 10% of traffic first. And then I just update. I give 10% to green to update. Now I can, once I have traffic, I can go to the tester. I can select green and do a simple test. So let me have the test example here. So this is basically an image. And it's a handwriting digital with 8 image. And then if I test the green, so it gives me 8. So
Awesome.
which is running well. Now say I want to go back. So everything is tested. It works great. So I want to give all traffic to green. I can just move to 100% and update it again.
Awesome.
And this should be done in very quick. Now we see the blue deployment is 0 now, right? Now I can retire the blue deployment. The traffic is all going all to green now. So I can retire, just delete.
And now we'll have one endpoint with one
So I just showed how easy it is to safely roll out a model with the blue-green deployment.
Yeah, on premises, on Kubernetes.
Yes.
That's what's special about it. That's super awesome. So thank you, Bozhong. This was really great. So, but Azure ML has one other feature, manage online endpoints, which sounds very similar to what you've shown us. Can you tell us the difference?
So both online endpoints are built upon Azure machine learning online endpoint. Users use the same set of tools to create and manage online endpoint. For Azure managed online endpoint, it runs on Azure managed compute, and customer doesn't need to manage computer and infrastructure and get a turnkey solution with guaranteed SOA. For Kubernetes online endpoint, it runs on customer managed Kubernetes. Customer has to be responsible for maintaining Kubernetes cluster and ensure online endpoint SOA. So that's our key difference.
All right. So if we want to manage our own endpoints, then we choose Kubernetes online endpoints. And if we want Azure to do the management for us, then we should use managed online endpoints, right?
Yes. Yes.
That makes a lot of sense. So where can people go to find out more?
So there's a blog, and then also we have the GitHub available. And then there's official documentation, aka ML doc. All these are resources for you to find out more information and get started easily.
This is so awesome, Bozhong. Thank you. Yeah. It was so great to have you on the show.
Thank you, my pleasure. Great to talk with everyone.
So in this episode, you'll learn how you can use Arc-enabled ML for inference on Azure. This feature allows you to deploy and serve models in any infrastructure on premises and across multi-cloud using Kubernetes. How cool is that? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Great. Where did Bozhong go? Bozhong, come back. We have questions for you. All right. I think Bozhong has left us. Let's see what we have here on our in the comments. So we have Aga says hello from Pakistan. Hello, Haga. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I hope I'm saying it correctly. Fernando says good vibes. Hi, Fernando. Lots of people joining. Salah, Mark. All right, so they're asking to share the commands. So I guess asking for us to share the commands on GitHub, like the notes that were being used. So I'll make sure that I'll ask Bozhong about that and see if he can share his demo. I think that's a great point. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Oh, my pronunciation is right. Yay, look at that. I pronounce it correctly. That's kind of rare. So hi, Ayşegül, you're muted.
Thank you. I've been talking to myself.
If you were saying something before, just for the record, I wasn't ignoring you.
Oh, that's awesome. If anybody has any questions, I did message Bozhong, and he might come back. If not, please comment on below the video so we can answer your questions there, and we'll add the link once we have it to his code, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So, let us know if you have any questions. So basically, I mean, the reason why this feature is super cool, I think it's super cool, I'm super excited about it, is that you've been able to do inference on Azure like for a while, and you've been able to do and training on Azure for a while, right? That's like kind of our bread and butter for Azure ML. And for a little bit, for a few months, we've been able to do training on your local Kubernetes machine, which there's so many reasons why people want to have their own Kubernetes machine, for, privacy, security. They don't want to share their data with Microsoft, whatever their reason is, totally cool. And we've been supporting that for training, but now at Ignite, we're announcing that we're also supporting that for endpoints. So now you can have your endpoints on-premise, on your own Kubernetes machine. You do have to manage it, so you do give up on a little bit of the advantages that we provide by if you have the endpoints with us. So then if you use the managed online endpoints, then we provide a bunch of functionality that you don't get if you use the Kubernetes, but you gain other things, right? You gain the ability to do things your way, like your free, like your flexibility, the flexibility that a lot of people want.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned, people not wanting to share their data with Microsoft, but even if they use the Azure, on the cloud, we still don't use it. Right?
Yeah. Exactly. We don't use it. That's a really good point. Yeah, we don't use it at all. But like even then, some people are extra, want to be extra careful, extra paranoid about their data, which is perfectly understandable given the recent focus on privacy and all that. And so this gives you yet another layer on top of what we already provide, which I think is already pretty impressive.
Yeah. One thing is it's not leaving your network, which might be important for some people.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
wow.
So yeah, I think that this is a cool feature that I think is actually going to be quite popular with our customers. So yeah, it's exciting to see it there.
It is, yes. We have a lot of new stuff coming up, and it's really nice to see that all the things that people can do on their own network. So we have our next guest, Hazem. I'm going to introduce him. Hi.
I'm going to.
Welcome.
Hi, Hazem. See, I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I'm saying Hazem because I asked ahead of time. Otherwise, I would not be pronouncing it correctly because I never do.
Yeah, I think the first time you did really well.
Yeah. It seems deceptively easy, the name, but
I know, right?
Yes, it's easy to get it wrong too. So it looks like you were in the office.
Yes, this is actually my first time in the office since the COVID.
Oh, wow. Nice. Are you in Seattle?
In Redmond?
No, I'm actually in Cairo, Egypt.
Oh, wow.
I did not know. What time is it there?
8:50 p.m.
Oh, okay. Wow. Not too bad. Huh. I did not know. Wow, that's even more exciting to have you here now.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Have you been to Egypt, Ayşegül? I want to go to Egypt.
Have you?
Yeah. No, I want to go.
Oh, yeah.
So now I know somebody in Egypt. Now it's like more like now I have an extra reason to get on a plane.
We have the best beaches in the world. I'll always maintain that.
Nice.
You can do a live AI show from Egypt one day, maybe.
Yeah, like I like that. A
idea.
business reason to go to Egypt. It just doesn't get any better than that. Like Microsoft
It'll be a special
plane.
episode.
Yeah.
Can we convince people that this is a necessity and, you know, we need the travel budget?
Yeah, I like it.
All right.
I'm going to remove myself and you guys can start talking.
See you later.
I'll see you soon.
Okay. So just a final reminder, just because I know you know this, but just because Bozhong left us, don't leave us.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No,
are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you do me a favor? Is there any way you could move that orange thing behind you?
Sure. No problem.
Yeah. Can anyone read his background? I can't.
How about this?
Nice. Thank you. Are those writings on the whiteboard from before COVID?
Yeah, this was pre-COVID. I tried to erase them, but they're not erasing, unfortunately. But if there's anything that's like too much, I can try to make sure that I look this way.
No, this is good.
As long as you don't have any passwords or like,
no, don't worry.
I don't know.
nothing confidential.
Phone numbers.
No, we're good.
Cool. Yeah, if you are ready to start, I'll make the introduction, and then for everyone on watching now, we are going to record a little section, but afterwards, Hazem will be available to answer your questions. So keep them coming. Bea will be looking at your questions. Yeah. Cool. Ready?
Yep.
All right. I'm going to remove you for a sec. Yeah. Going to center myself, at least try. All right. Hi, everyone. You don't want to miss this episode of AI Show. We will learn what's new with language services. Hi, Hazem. Welcome to the AI Show. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Can you start by introducing yourself and what you do at Microsoft?
Sure. So I am a PM for the Language Cognitive Service, which is a new unified service that I'm happy to kind of show you today what it can do and what it is and where we're going as well.
That is so exciting. So can you tell us more about what are the problems that our language services are solving?
So in this day and age, it's very hard to kind of automate certain processes. So especially when you have a lot of text, to analyze that text and actually get the value out of it becomes very difficult. So language cognitive service should make it much easier. Think of things like being able to classify customer support emails into certain categories so you can just process them faster and route them quicker, or maybe even just finding the answer in a bunch of documents that you might have using a automatic knowledge base, or simply being able to interact with your customers using natural language so you don't have to make them wait for someone to help them, that they can just help themselves immediately.
Oh, that's a lot of things that you could do that. Are you going to show us in action?
Yes, absolutely. I can start sharing my screen.
Okay. Cool.
So cognitive service for language should allow you to transform your businesses with AI and specifically natural language processing. But before I go into cognitive service for language, I have to quickly brief about the original products that exist as part of cognitive services. So originally there were 3 independent services: text analytics, language understanding, and Q&A maker. Text analytics allowed you to have multiple pre-built capabilities for natural language processing, such as analyzing sentiment or being able to summarize text or even extracting personally identifiable information. In language understanding, most commonly known as LUIS, you could create your own custom language models for intents and entities that would allow you to understand conversational language from your customers and classify those queries that they're sending you into certain intents or actions, and extract out the relevant entities or pieces of information. And with Q&A Maker, you could build your own custom knowledge base where if you wanted to ask a question within that knowledge base, it would extract out the answer immediately. So those are the 3 services that existed as part of the cognitive services. And what's coming new is cognitive service for language, where all of these 3 independent products are now features under one umbrella. This one unified service is now going to be much more powerful. It is much easier to use as well, with one Azure resource, one user experience, one SDK, and even one set of APIs. All of this should be much easier to use for developers. And you'll also be getting a more cohesive, simpler, and powerful product. So it is based on state-of-the-art technology, and it is also multilingual, and this applies to our custom capabilities, where you can train our custom capabilities in one language and immediately train them and test them out in other languages.
That sounds really amazing. And it was kind of confusing to me to use all of these different services like text analytics and Lewis. I'm so glad to hear they're all one service now.
Yeah, and what's great about it is we're categorize them into 3 easy to understand categories. So you can classify text, extract information, or understand conversations. Now, if you're familiar with all of those 3 individual products, these might be familiar features to you, and there are a few new ones that have actually been introduced. So when you come to classify text, you could have always analyzed sentiment and mine opinions, detect language, and what's coming new is custom text classification, where you can actually create your own custom classifiers for your large pieces of text that you would find in documents, for example. And for extracting information, you could extract out PII, key phrases, and others. And also one of our brand new features is being able to create your own custom entities using custom named entity recognition. And finally, for understanding conversations, the 2 other products, such as Language Understanding or Lewis and Q&A Maker, are now in their new and improved versions called Custom Question Answering for Q&A Maker and Conversational Language Understanding for Lewis. And these should all be much more powerful alternatives to the ones that you had previously. All of these features and capabilities will actually be available as part of the Language Studio, which is one portal that should allow you to try out any pre-built capabilities, as well as build out any of our custom capabilities directly from the UI without having to write a single line of code.
I love that. This is enabling a lot of people to work together and different experts work together just through the studio. I really want to see it in action. It looks beautiful.
Great, so I can just jump to the demo when all I would have to do is sign into language.cognitive.azure.com. And let me just jump to the demo here. And here is Language Studio. The first thing that shows up when you sign in is that you have to select a language resource, or you can create one. So if you're familiar with cognitive services, you usually have to create resources to access the services. In this case, you have to create a language resource. And if you don't have one already created, you can simply click here to create one, or you can create it through the Azure portal under language. And I already have one here, so I'm just going to select it. And that gives me access to the Language Studio, which has all of those different capabilities that we just discussed available here to simply click through and try out immediately. I'm going to be showing one pre-built capability and then one custom capability. So I'm going to start with Extract Health Information, which is a pre-built capability that should allow you to extract out relevant information for medical purposes. Over here is when you click through, you get this view that allows you to enter in your own text, but we can actually use one of the samples that are provided by the Language Studio. The sample here says patient needs to take 100 milligrams of ibuprofen and 3 milligrams of potassium, and along with some other prescriptions. And then I simply have to acknowledge that running this demo will incur a charge. And then when you press on run, you actually get the analysis of that piece of text that was provided here in this user-friendly view. In this analysis, you'll see that it was able to extract out dosages from this prescription, such as 100 milligrams, 3 milligrams, 10 milligrams. And you'll also see that it's able to extract out those medication names, ibuprofen, potassium, and Colmidine over here as well. And you can actually associate each of those to a database of known medicines that are very familiar here. And we are simply using one of them, but you can actually get all of these at the same time. So if you're interacting with a known database for medications, you can actually easily extract it immediately from extract health information here. And another thing is that you can actually see the relationship between dosages and medication names. So even though I was able to extract out all of these pieces of information immediately, I might have not been able to identify which dosage belongs to which medication name. But with extract health information, we do create that relationship for you and visualize it over here using this connection. You'll see here that this dosage is actually the dosage of medication for this medication name.
This is really, really cool.
And what you can also do is just see the exact JSON response, since these are all available as APIs. And this is the JSON response that you would get if you were to call that endpoint directly. You'll see here the dosage is extracted, the medication is extracted, as well as the links to those known data sources for medications as well. So all of those are immediately available as part of the JSON, and you can switch between the JSON response or the friendly user result that you see here as well. And all of our pre-built capabilities follow this exact same paradigm. It should be very easy to use. It should be very easy to analyze the actual response that you would get from using the endpoint or the API. And any of these should be very familiar for all the other capabilities that are available as pre-built capabilities. Now to jump to a custom capability, the one that I'll be demoing is conversational language understanding. So over here, I can see that I can simply click through to conversational language understanding, and it will take me to create my own project. And when I create a new project, I'll have two options that I can create. There's the conversation project, which allows me to create my own custom intent classifiers and entity extractors, or an orchestration workflow project, which is a bit more involved, where you can actually connect multiple conversation projects, or even question answering knowledge bases, or even classic Lewis applications to one endpoint, and that one endpoint will route your request to the appropriate underlying service. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to focus on the conversation project. And once you press next, you simply have to provide a name, and let's try to create a flight booking app. And over here, I'll actually be able to select the primary language of my project. But you'll see here there's this extra checkbox that allows me to enable multiple languages. And what that will do is it will allow me to predict for not just the language that I'm training in, but also other languages straight out the box. And we'll be demoing that shortly as well. So after you press next, you can simply press create. But I already have one that's been created for me. So let me just jump over here. And what you'll see here on the left is this navigation menu that should be very similar to across all the other custom capabilities that we have. This should be a very similar experience. Once you build one thing in Language Studio for a custom project, you should be able to do it for all the other custom capabilities as well. The first thing that we start off with here is the build schema page, where you can create intents and entities. Intents are the actions that your users might take, such as booking a flight or trying to check into a flight, or simply querying a timetable like when is the next flight to London. Or entities, which are the relevant pieces of information within your customer queries, such as the booking reference or the destination city or the source city. And after you add and create those custom intents and entities, you now have to provide data to train those intents and entities. So over here, it should be very simple to simply select which intent that you're actually trying to create, and then or add data to, and simply say something like book a flight from Cairo to Montreal. Then you can add that as an example, and then easily label that with this source and destination by simply hovering over it quickly. And then once you're done, finally, you can save your changes. Now, after your changes are saved, you can go ahead and train a model or override an existing model. And then after that, I'll jump to getting to deploy your model. Simply all you have to do is deploy a model over here, click deploy, but this one is already deployed, and then you can try it out immediately again in the Language Studio. So everything that you can do when it comes to creating your project, adding data, training, deploying is all available directly through the studio. And then once you're done deploying, you can test out that endpoint. And we can actually try out things like check me into my flight, or hashtag ABC123, and run that as a test. And you'll see here, I get the top intent check in flight with a high confidence score, and then it was able to extract out the booking reference number, pound ABC123, and you'll see the JSON response that I get as well, very similar to the other capability that we showed earlier. You'll get the exact response that you would get if you were to call this endpoint directly. And we can actually try something like book me a flight from Toronto to Mexico, and run that as a test. And you'll see here I get the top intent, which is book flight. I get my source and destination, which are in fact Toronto and Mexico. But let's talk about the multilingual capabilities of this custom service. So let's try to translate this using Bing Translator to another language. Let's translate this to French, for example. Now I'm going to copy this over, come back, run that test. And even though I only trained in English data, I was still able to predict against this multilingual model using a French example. So using this French example, I got the right top intent, I got the right source and destination as well, even though I trained entirely in English. We can actually try out other languages as well. So let's try German, for example. We'll try that and then paste that in and run that test. And once again, you'll see that we got the right intent, the right source, and the right destination. You'll see here, even with a different spelling of Mexico, because this is the German spelling, we still were able to correctly extract out the destination. And we can also try out something like simplified Chinese, which is in a completely different script. Go back, paste this in, run that test. And what you'll see here, I was still able to get the right top intent. I was still able to get a source and destination. And just to make sure that these are in fact Toronto and Mexico, let's just copy them over and translate them back. So this one that I just copied should be Toronto, which was the source. And we can go back, copy over the destination, and just check whether or not that's also Mexico. And it is. So even though I've trained only with a few examples, this is actually exactly 12 examples, I was able to train my model, deploy it, and then immediately predict it with other languages, even though I only used English data for those 12 examples.
This is truly mind-blowing to me. So you can customize it once and then use it in any language that we are supporting. And how many languages are we supporting?
We support up to 19 languages officially, but under the hood, you can actually try out multiple different languages. Simply, the ones that we officially support are the ones that we've validated, but up to 100 languages are actually supported.
Oh, really nice. There's lots of exciting news, but which ones were the new ones for Ignite?
So the fact that this language studio is now available is one of the new releases of Ignite, as well as these new capabilities, conversational language understanding, which is the next generation of LUIS, as well as custom named entity recognition and custom text classification, which are similar to conversation language understanding, but for larger pieces of text. These are all three new features and capabilities that are currently in public preview, as well as the unification of those services, text analytics, question answering, and LUIS. All of those are now features under the unified language service. And custom question answering as well has gone GA. For those that are familiar with Q&A Maker, it used to be called Q&A Maker V2. That was in public preview and is now in GA as a feature under the unified language service.
Mm-hmm. And what happened to the older services like Q&A Maker and LUIS individually?
Great question. So LUIS and Q&A Maker, their original old versions will still be maintained as GA services. So you can still use them. They will not have any disruption of service. And Text Analytics has simply been rebranded to the language service. So the only change in terms of a Text Analytics customer should just be that they now expect to see language instead of Text Analytics. And everything has been unified under that umbrella.
That makes life so much easier. This is great. And so where can people learn more about this?
So you can go to any of these 3 links to get started. You can go to language.cognitive.azure.com to sign into the Language Studio and try out those capabilities, as I just showed. You can get started in Azure by creating that resource by going to aka.ms/language-azure. And you can even go to the documentation at aka.ms/language-docs to try to read through the documentation and learn more about each of these features and capabilities.
Great, thank you. We really appreciate you coming in and telling us about these new services and features. And join us next time.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for joining, everyone. We learned about unified language services and custom bilingual capabilities. Join us next time. Great, thank you. This was amazing.
Yay.
It really blows my mind that the language.
Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. I hope it was a good demo, and I'm glad to see excited to see kind of the actual packaged version.
Yes, can't wait
it was
to
awesome.
Play with it. And thank your team for us on our behalf. Bea, do we have any questions?
We don't have any questions, but I think people should post some questions.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any questions?
What do we have? Do I have any questions? I don't know. I mean, I've seen the demo before, right? So I'm like the wrong person to ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? I don't know. I was just thinking, like, what are some of the applications uses that you see people are going to be using the most?
Good question. So the things like chatbots and IoT devices are generally enabled by things like cognitive service for language. So conversational language understanding, which I just demoed, is really the intelligence behind any chatbot. It's where you're able to understand what your users are saying. It's also powered by things like Q&A Maker or custom question answering, as it is referred to as now, where some people will simply frequently ask questions, and you want to be able to give them the direct answer immediately. You can use custom question answering for that. But think of also being able to automate processes like customer support. So you might be a service or a product that gets a bunch of customer emails. And when those customer emails come in, you need to be able to easily classify them to be able to know who should be responsible for them. And you could obviously get a bunch of people to read through every email and then route them accordingly. But you could automate it with something like custom text classification, which should just be able to train a machine learning model by providing it with some data so that it could be able to predict any new information to one of the custom classes that you've provided it to. Even if you have things like legal contracts that you want to extract out relevant information from. Let's say you want to be able to extract out the privacy terms from a bunch of legal documents, you can use custom text extraction or custom named entity recognition to be able to extract out that information easily.
That's cool. So basically, we get to use humans for the things that humans are really good at, and the things that are boring and tedious, we can just let machines do that. I'm all for that.
Exactly.
And we all have those things that we can automate.
Absolutely, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Anything that has to do with large bodies of text, usually thousands and thousands of documents, being able to automate that is going to be key for everyone.
Mm-hmm. And for the custom language, how much data do we need to customize something? And can we start by using our models and add to it, for example?
Great question. So usually what you could start off with to simply try things out is even something as low as 10 to 12 examples for kind of training data.
Wow.
Then after that, the accuracy of your results really does depend on how much data you actually have provided. And then each of these will all improve over time as well. So the more we progress, the more our state-of-the-art technology advances, it'll be quicker for you to actually develop very accurate models.
Great. We actually have a question.
Okay, exactly. You go.
Sure. What are the pricing for these services after the trial period? As of now, there isn't a determined pricing point for each of these. So for the ones that you may have been familiar with before, such as text analytics capabilities like sentiment analysis and key phrase extraction or named entity recognition. Those are still standard prices as they are today for the GA prices. But for the new capabilities that are currently free, they still do not have a determined price. All of them, as of right now, are currently for free.
It's a great time to try it out.
Exactly.
That's the best price.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Great.
are we able to see the pricing on the language studio?
Not in the language studio, but you can go to the Azure Commerce portal where you can see the pricing page. And actually, I can maybe paste a link to the Azure Commerce pricing portal. So that should be easier for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. This was really exciting. Thank you so much for joining us. And we would like to see you again next time.
Okay. I'm excited too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.
All right. We have our next guest.
How are you?
Chris.
Hey, doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
Yeah, and we are so excited to hear about OpenAI. I actually use GitHub Copilot a lot, and I love it.
Yeah.
And you demoed it, right? I saw for
on
Ignite, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there were other demos too, but it is truly mind-blowing, especially I think if you are learning a new language, for example, like Python or whatever it is, or new framework, it just makes your life so much easier because you have all of the syntax created for you. Oh,
I was just thinking that this earlier today, actually, because I can never remember the syntax for dictionaries, and I always have to look it up.
I know,
and
right?
with Copilot, you can just tell it to give you a dictionary and fill it in from there. It's awesome.
It is really nice. Yeah, I actually haven't used React much, and I was able to create a demo in React because, well, here's Copilot. I feel so much more confident as a developer using it. And Faisal says he loves it too. Are you using it? Why OpenAI is not open source? Oh, we have a question already. Do you want to answer, or do you want to leave it to the end?
I mean, I can answer. It's not maybe the answer he's looking for, but it's something I can't. It's OpenAI is kind of its own company, and so it's a decision that they will have to make as part of their strategies.
Okay, good to know.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Are you guys ready?
I'm so looking forward to the summarization part. I'm totally like giving it away. Sorry. I'm just totally telling you. But that's what I want to see, because I know Chris is going to talk about that.
All right. I'm going to leave you to it, and we'll have the intro. See you later.
Yeah. So Chris, do you mind adding your demo, like sharing your screen, just so that we're ready for it when the time comes?
Yes, it should already be shared.
Yeah, it is.
It is? Oh, I see it. Yeah, you're totally cool. Yeah, you're ready. All right. Okay, then let's start. Okay. You don't want to miss this episode of the AI Show where Chris Hoder talks about new OpenAI capabilities on Azure. Stay tuned. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the AI Show. Today, I'll be talking with Chris Hoder about the latest OpenAI API. Hi, Chris.
Hey, thanks for
super happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me here. I'm super excited. I'm already jumping in. So I'm Chris. I'm a lead program manager in the Azure OpenAI service, which is one of the new products within the cognitive services that we announced this week at Ignite.
That's awesome. So you already answered my first question. I was going to ask who you are and what you do. Got it. So can you tell us more about OpenAI? What is OpenAI? Some people may not have heard of OpenAI here.
Yeah, OpenAI is a research company that was founded a few years ago, and really they have the core goal and mission to develop an artificial general intelligence. But to do that, with a really responsible way, ensuring that that's done as kind of a core principle of the development. And really since that founding, they've been pushing the cutting edge of what's possible in machine learning and AI. And they've had several kind of breakthroughs on the state of the art, particularly in the language space, but also in other areas like vision and audio.
Yeah, and they're also like one of the most trusted companies, right? I see that a lot in like surveys that people answer, which is very cool. Like in this day and age, that matters a lot. And so, can you tell us about the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI?
Yeah, the partnership with between us and OpenAI has been a multi-year partnership. It really goes back to 2019, where we formally announced the partnership, and that was really based on that shared value of thinking about trustfulness and responsible use of AI as we develop and bring new technologies forward. And then in late 2020, we kind of re-upped and built on that agreement, where we announced that we were working with OpenAI to take their really powerful kind of state-of-the-art GPT-3 language models and learn how to bring those to market to help you and our customers leverage those capabilities in new ways. And really, since that announcement, we've started to see that come to fruition, and we've seen it across Microsoft's products. And a couple of the ones that I'm super excited about are Microsoft's Power Apps, which is in the Power Platform. It's a low-code application development software, and they're using or implementing GPT-3 to really make low code closer to no code, where you can just provide your free text information of what you want to do. GPT-3 in the product will convert that to the formula you need in your application, and so it's just kind of making it that much easier and that much more efficient and fast to get to value. The other one, which hopefully we'll demo here shortly, is GitHub's Copilot. It's just such a fantastic tool to kind of really accelerate development and make it just so much easier to get started.
Yeah, I think Power Apps, I think the cool thing is that, we have like a certain number of developers in the world, and Power Apps just extends that number by so much. And just the sheer like power that comes with that is just crazy, right? Just to think about that.
Yeah, it's awesome. The Power Platform is just like all their products. You can go from idea to something running that you can give to folks in a weekend. If you didn't know anything about the product at the start, it's I think a really big change in the way of how easy it is to build these kinds of applications.
Yeah. So you and your team, you guys have a big announcement for Ignite, right? Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So this week we announced the Azure OpenAI service, which is a product within the Cognitive Services AI suite, where we are bringing OpenAI's models and API capabilities onto Azure as a first-party service that Microsoft is providing. And if you go to the aka.ms link on the screen, you'll be able to learn more. And really, this was the next step in a journey that started sometime last year, where I should say May last year, where OpenAI released their APIs and their service. That was the first time developers got access to the GPT-3 models, which is a very large language model that's really been setting the state of the art in terms of performance in just many different tasks. And over that year, we learned a lot and we saw a lot. And if you kind of look around, you'll see that customers are discovering hundreds of different ways to use these applications. But what we found was that as companies got further along in that process and started to integrate these models into their core use cases and their mission critical applications, they started to ask and need things like security, compliance, and regulatory requirements. And so that's things like network isolation, managed identity authentication, certification-backed guarantees. And all of these things are kind of fundamental in the cloud. It's kind of part of Azure's core DNA, and our services really strive to provide that to enable the enterprise in the cloud. And so it became more and more evident that bringing OpenAI's models and Azure closer together was just going to be a really great fit. And so that's what we announced here at Ignite, was the Azure OpenAI service, which provides that same functionality on Azure with the security and compliance backing.
That sounds like the perfect partnership for me. Yeah. So I want to see a demo.
Yeah, let's hop into it.
Can we see a demo?
So if you guys are following any of the earlier kind of breakout sessions at Ignite, we showed a lot about how customers are applying this in the application side. I wanted to dive into the code and show a little bit more about the developer experience. And if you're not familiar with GPT-3 or their language models, they have several different kinds: Ada, Babbage, Curie, and DaVinci. DaVinci is their big state-of-the-art one. And the way it works is you just provide free text in and it generates free text out. And that simple approach actually becomes super flexible. And I want to show that here in this demo. And so what you're seeing on the screen is a Python Jupyter notebook running in Visual Studio Code. And I'll just kind of walk you through what we have. And so I'm just have a config file that I'm not showing, and this has the access credentials and URI and things. And then I have a simple method here, and what it's doing is it's wrapping around really one REST API call, and I'm calling the /completions endpoint on our service, and that's the meat and potatoes of what the service offers. It's you send the text in, it'll give you back the generated text out. And so in the data payload, there's a prompt, and that's your text input. And then there are a lot of different optimization parameters you can pass to the service, but for early stage iteration and kind of getting started, you don't need to know these. It's super simple. You can just provide text in and you get the text out. So with that, let's hop into the demo. So one of the kind of areas that we're seeing lots of customer interest in ideation and new experiences on using GPT-3 is I kind of like to think of it as the blank page problem, right? So how do you help somebody summarize content, rewrite content, generate headlines and things so that you can do that more efficiently, be a copywriter, and do more editing. And so I actually ran into this problem earlier this week when we were writing a blog to announce the service. You need to write a headline for the blog that everyone will see. And so I thought, well, why not let GPT-3 tell us that? And so what you have here in my prompt, I'm just asking the service and the model to create a headline for this article. And that's kind of the beauty of the models in the service is you can talk to it in natural English and it will interpret it and respond back. And so you don't need to have as much knowledge of machine learning and building out data structures and things as you have in some classical methods. And then I provide, a couple of paragraphs on what we're announcing, a paragraph on how the service works, and then a paragraph on how to apply it responsibly. And so that's all I'm going to send to the service. And let's see what it sends us back. And so it's a fairly long piece of text. It will take a few seconds to run. And so what we get back is that Azure OpenAI service is the newest addition to the Azure AI portfolio. It provides customers access to OpenAI's GPT-3 and Codex models through simple and intuitive REST APIs.
That's
pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think I would
really
use
good.
that.
Yeah, I would too. So what would happen if you run it again?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the model is stochastic by design, which means that you're not guaranteed to get the same response time and time again. And so you'll notice very, very similar, but instead of AI portfolio, we got back Azure Cognitive Services. And that actually leads really well into my next demo, where there is a parameter here called temperature, which controls that, variation or randomness. And the higher value you get, the more variation you're going to get on your responses. It's going to look different each time. And so something like headlines, you might find that there's a lot of qualitative, subjective evaluation you want to do. And so you might not want 1, you might want 5. And so one thing you can do is you can increase that temperature, get some more variation, and then increase the number that is returned. And so instead of returning the most likely response, you can return the top 5. And so what you can see here is I went and ran that. And so now we got 5 different variations, and we can kind of read through them, where we have, what we saw in the earlier one with the Azure AI portfolio. We got a blank. Sometimes it'll just return blank. So it's something you need to, when you're looking at application development, you'd want to handle. Azure OpenAI service is now in preview. Maybe not the most engaging, but could still work.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. And so then this 5th one, you can see it's kind of gone off in a very different direction on the 5th one. So that's kind of shows you when you increase the temperature, you'll get more interesting, but potentially kind of maybe not what you were looking for.
Yeah, it's good.
Cool. So I did have a second example here, which is going to use the same endpoint, but we're going to do a completely different task to show you that generalizability of the model. And so because it's free text in, that actually makes it really easy to adapt to new tasks, because you can just kind of provide it different context. And so, here we can imagine we want to extract airport codes in a comma separated list. And what you can do, again, tell it what you want, and then you can show it what you want. And it's going to analyze what you've shown it and use that for pattern matching so that it'll follow up in a more accurate and consistent response. And so here I have 2 examples of what I want. I want the text input and then the codes back. So I want to fly from Los Angeles to Miami, respond with LAX and MIA. So provide 2 of those, and then we're going to predict flying from Orlando to Portland. And so I don't know if you happen to know what the airport codes for either one are.
I'm terrible at those things. I mean, if you put Seattle there, I might know, but that's really about it.
Yeah, these are two of the more interesting ones because Orlando is actually MCO and Portland is PWM.
Yeah, would not have guessed that.
So let's send it to the model and we get back PWM and MCO.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And if you were developing this, right, so you would continue to send these examples and you would just change your text. And so we could send Boston as well, and we'll get back MCO in Boston.
Very cool. All right. Well, this was just amazing. I think everyone will agree with me that this is just so exciting. Like just even just 2 years ago, like you couldn't imagine this kind of work being done. It's just great. But recently there's been a lot of focus on using technology responsibly, and especially these large models. So can you tell us what we're doing to help people use this technology responsibly?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think you can see that this model in particular, right, they are very general. It can be applied to multiple different tasks and things. And so it becomes really important that you design your solutions with it so that it can be used responsibly. And so, we start with the core principles that we have at Microsoft, and then we start to look at, how can we get what is the benefit a customer can get? What are the harms? And how do we enable the benefits while mitigating the harms? And so that we're looking at lots of different areas. It's, product tools and guidance that we're looking to provide. And so things like how do we design in from the start content filters and things that will help the developers of the application ensure that their customers don't use it in unintended ways. And then as well providing guidance and how to best develop and use the service.
That makes a lot of sense. So where can people go to find out more about this?
Yeah, so people can go to the AI blog that was shown earlier. We just popped up. Yes, aka.ms/OpenAI service blog. And then as well, if you go to Azure or the azure.microsoft.com, we have a product page up there now.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for all of that. I think this is just super exciting. I don't think I'm the only one to think that. So thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I'm hoping I will be back very soon with lots of new features to show you guys.
We'll have you back. You have my word on that. So in this episode, you learned about the new OpenAI cognitive service on Azure, and you saw how you can use it to summarize text and generate new text. Thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Yay.
Hi.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was
Thank
so
you.
cool. This was so cool. My mind is just like racing. As you were demoing, I was like, I want people to start using it in apps that I would use. And like one of the scenarios that I just want, so I'm just giving this one idea. Now, if you guys want to start a startup or something, or like an app that I would pay money for, just give me something that summarizes my tech news for the day. But where I input how many minutes I'm willing to spend that day to read the tech news for that day. Because sometimes, I have 20 minutes on weekends, right? On weekday mornings, I have 2 minutes, right? And so just give me the highlights, just what happened today. So I would love an app that does that. And it feels like this would fit perfectly for that, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely could. I think there's lots of capabilities in the summarization, especially, I didn't have time to show it, but you can actually, with the more powerful DaVinci model, summarize for different audiences and different lengths, and you can provide it that, I think. So it's certainly an application that could be done. News always gets into a little bit of a tricky area with these kind of powerful language models, and so we just have to make sure we have the right controls in place and so that it can't be used for unintended consequences.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense.
Can you explain what you mean by different audiences?
Yeah, so if you want to have the model, so different audiences use different kind of vocabulary, different linguistic styles and things. And so explaining something to a more broad-based audience, you might want to use less technical content, or maybe it's more informal if it's a younger crowd, or you might even go more formal if it's in a kind of, trying to think of a formal setting that you might want to be just not using contractions and things like that.
I've seen some people. Yeah, I've seen some people use this too, like just as in demos and stuff, just where they actually input in the prompt, like explain, quantum physics to a 6-year-old. And then you get a little paragraph that even I can understand, which is like pretty cool, right? So,
yeah, it's a great example. Yeah.
As a non-native speaker too, I really appreciate that, being able to summarize some of the things. Some stuff really sounds like French to me, which I don't know.
But that's actually another great use case you could use it for, right? Like in addition to headlines, you can look at like rewriting and rephrasing, right? And so it's like, hey, I don't understand this. Right. Rephrase this using different words could be actually another great use case to help, people that maybe don't understand all the words in a content.
That's so true. I wonder if you could even simplify the English, like for people who aren't native speakers. I don't know if that's already possible, or in the future, like, explain, Shakespeare and to somebody who's not a native speaker, or like, translate this book to somebody who's not a native speaker, native English speaker, or something like that.
Shakespeare, for example. Faisal says that, I think Reddit explain like I'm fine. That would be a perfect use case. So, you brought the subject, I think. I have another question. You probably don't know, but Chris has been in Microsoft for a long time, and he did really cool projects. One of them is called JFK Files. And what would you do differently this time if you were working with that?
Ooh, that's a great question.
And tell us about what it is first.
That's what I was going to ask, because I actually don't know what it is.
Yeah, JFK Files is an awesome demo. I didn't personally build it, unfortunately, as much as I would like to claim that. But it basically uses Azure Search and Azure Cognitive Search to take the JFK files that were released in the US from the government on their research into the JFK assassination, ran it through Azure Cognitive Search, which runs it across a lot of our cognitive services to extract information from that free text, from the images, build it into a search engine, and then build a knowledge graph on top of it. And so you can look at connections between things. You can get more intelligent search. So if you searched Oswald, you would get the picture, right? Because it could identify him and link it. So if we were going to do that again, that is actually a great question. I think it just becomes a lot. So one of the things that you do as part of building that knowledge graph is you build kind of blanking on the word within Azure Search. You build the little kind of skills, and you can build custom skills, right? And so something with the power of GPT-3 is creating something like that can extract certain content in you have a specific task in mind to extract it, becomes much easier, because you can kind of iterate on the prompt, get the prompt working, and then kind of tag it into a skill to run it across your data corpus. So I think we could look at lots of more complex questions than maybe we did in the past.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
I can't imagine. I mean, people reading all of those documents and trying to figure out manually, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, I was wondering, do you have like a bonus demo for us, like a copilot? I don't know. I'm just guessing. You may.
I do. Do you guys want to see some copilot? Yes.
That was a wild guess, by the way.
So what I showed earlier was kind of the power of language and kind of analyzing language text. One of the other things that is powered by the Azure OpenAI service is GitHub Copilot. And that uses a model called Codex, which is a descendant of GPT-3, but it's been trained on code. And so becomes like your developer assistant. And rather than just explain it, let me just show you. And so the first thing you're doing whenever you're coding, right, you want to do hello world. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to type print hello world. And what Codex is going to get, or Copilot is going to give me back, is the command, right? Print hello world. So that's kind of a simple one, but we can keep going, right? So print hello world 5 times. And it's going to, dynamically generate me the code of what I asked it to. But we can keep going, right? So I think one of the ones, we were talking earlier, that it's really helpful when you've kind of forgotten the language or maybe don't know the language. And so I was thinking one thing I remembered from my kind of algorithm schools was like creating linked lists. And so what if we wanted to create a linked list called node? So we want to create a linked list called node. It's even suggesting, right, with 2 data fields, data and next. So I will take that. And what Copilot will do, it'll take that command and it'll start to generate, not just one line, but the full function. But even in this case, right, when you're developing a class, there's multiple functions there. So what you can also do with Copilot is similar to the example I did with the headlines, synthesize not 1, but 10 different solutions and start to look at, which ones of these what do I want, right? And so in this case, they're all very similar. But I was trying this earlier without this. And if we rerun, sometimes.
Yeah, demo cards.
Yeah, here we go. So in this case, again, it's stochastic, so you're going to get slightly different results back each time. What I was trying to get it to show is you can also get it to do multiple functions, but we could also do, get data, set data, and it will start to kind of add and build. And so it gets more powerful the more code you start to provide, because it's going to have more and more context, similar to that airport code extractor. I had one last one just to kind of continue to build on the complexity. Another kind of fun example is if you wanted to do a random name generator. And so here I have this Python function generate random names, and I want to do 4 things. I want to create a list of 10 first names, 10 last names, combine them, and return it. And so you'll see that it returns, essentially exactly what I asked.
Oh, wow.
And so we could go run this, and this is a compilable set of code.
It is really cool.
Is really cool.
And this is why people don't let you use VS Code when you're interviewing.
That's exactly what I was thinking, like interviewing, right? I wonder if these kind of interview style questions that we all have to know will become irrelevant, right? Because, yeah, I mean, if somebody asked me, how do you reverse a linked list? I would use Copilot, and I would just write reverse a linked list, see what it comes out, right?
Yeah, we can try it.
Ooh. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and so, yeah, so these things I find is awesome, because like there's a lot of kind of common things that are really common that you forget. And this can just kind of really just make that so much faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Mohit says these days, even developer jobs are not secure. You're still deciding on, what to write, right? I mean, you don't just give it a program. Hey, give me this program that gives me this. But it's more complex than that.
Yeah, and I really like to think of this as like your assistant. It helps you be more productive and kind of work faster, but it's not going to replace it. Like especially as you're using kind of more complex code, right? It's not always going to be compilable and perfect, and so it helps put you more in that editor and refinement space than kind of content initial creation. And similar to my personal experience, similar to like essay writing, it's way easier and more powerful, and you're create something better when you're doing editing than that first round of creation.
Yeah, that's exactly how I think about it. It's like, it's not so much it's going to replace us, it's just going to make our jobs more, and it's going to position us in the part of the job that is more interesting and more like where we actually have to think, where you actually need a human to make those decisions, and it's going to remove the more repetitive parts of our job, which I think is okay. I'm okay with that.
And let's face it, we Google these things anyways, right? Like we look at how people implemented those things. So it's just saving us some time to see what other ways people have been using it.
Yeah. Exactly.
One other cool thing I noticed when I included the SDK, cognitive services SDKs, it was even better because, it knows the context of it so well. And the methods and everything else. So it was quite impressive.
Yeah, that would have been a great demo to highlight the other cognitive services generated by Copilot next time.
Yeah, I actually did it on Ignite. So if anyone wants to see it, I think it's still there, right?
Yes, yeah, they should be up on the mic. Was it Ignite? Yeah.
Yeah.
You got them handy.
Yeah, check it out.
So then how many cognitive services does Microsoft have right now then? And what are they? Can you guys name them?
Chris?
So there's 5 pillars, and then
5.
OpenAI. So there's speech, vision, language, decision, and
OpenAI.
and
Speech, language,
yeah,
decision?
speech, language, vision, and decision, and then OpenAI. And then within each one, we have a set of services. So speech is all just speech services. It's been unified. You heard earlier today that about the language services being unified under one thing. And then vision has computer vision, custom vision, and face. And then
video analyzer, maybe? I think video analyzer is
applied AI services. So they're kind of a level up built on those core functionalities. Yeah.
So we have a question. Oh.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. I was just going to highlight the question, like, is it limited to Python?
It is not limited to just Python. It does cover several different languages. I'm probably going to get the full list wrong, but it is listed in the copilot documentation. But it also does like JavaScript and a few others.
Mm-hmm.
But does it work better on Python, would you say? Or is it pretty comparable?
That's a great question. I am primarily a Python person, so I have not kind of done as much testing on the other languages, but would love to hear, everyone that's listening in, your thoughts on which ones you find best.
Yeah, I used it with JavaScript and it worked great. Yeah. Cool. And what is your, if you have the time, Chris, what is the app that you would want to build next with it?
Ooh, the app that I would want to build next.
Can you build my tech news app? Because I would use it. I would give you money for it.
Yeah. I want extra feature though, which is kind of summarizing meetings,
Ooh. Yeah.
That would save me a lot of time.
I know. Yeah. We just had a 2-day conference and people ask like, oh, what were the action items from it? And I'm like, oh no, I don't know. We have the scripts, but somebody has to go through and find all of the action items, which is really hard.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
Ooh, that is. You've stumped me a little bit. There's just so many options. And
our audience also. I mean, if you guys, what apps would you build or would you like to see built on top of this?
I'm always a fan of developing games, and so I did try. You can do a lot of fun, really quick game development with Copilot. I find it really can make that really quick to do, especially when you're rusty in coding like I am sometimes.
Yeah. And yeah, when you switch the language too, like you don't have to go and try to remember every syntax. It's really nice.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
So Faisal is saying this.
Huh.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, anything else that you want to share with us? Or before we let you continue with your day?
No, I think we covered on all the big things. I think the only other thing I don't know if I mentioned is it is while we are excited to kind of scale up adoption, it is invite only right now, and so we're kind of working with a small set of customers to really that have those well-defined use cases that are used, representing responsible use, and we're using them to really work together and figure out, what are the right sets of approaches and tools that are needed to help a broader set of folks be successful. And so more to come.
Yeah. We have kind of like a question or comment. Seems like it has great potential to modernize of legacy apps such as VB6. I'm not familiar with VB6, but are you guys?
I am. Well, unfortunately, I'm no longer, but back in the days, I was for a brief moment. Not a huge fan.
What is it? Can you explain?
Visual Basic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. 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 So for a while, .NET was supporting both Visual Basic. I don't know how it is now. I haven't kept up with .NET World, but it was supporting both Visual Basic and C#. And yeah, I do think C# is a more powerful language. And so I understand the comment of wanting to modernize some of those apps. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't tried it for code-to-code translation. That could be an interesting application.
Yeah.
Good Friday afternoon thing to play around with.
Yes.
Could stretch into the weekend. Just warning, you know.
It is addicting. You can really.
Well, thank you, Chris, for joining us. This was really nice. And thank you for all the features that you guys are working on for OpenAI.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm hoping to be back soon.
Yes.
I hope you will. Bye, Chris.
Bye.
Wow, that was a lot.
That was like, it was an intense week, or a few weeks for us with Ignite and everything. But
you can still watch our demos at Ignite, aka.ms ignite-day.ai. We have really short demos, but I also want to kind of go over what I did on the demo here in our next episode. Not next, but sometime soon.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Because I have very limited time, right? Like I could show it really fast and kind of increase the amount of time, speed of my demo, but we can actually talk here. And if you watch it and if you have any questions, please do comment. So we'll answer those questions too.
Yeah, so I won't be here in the next one. I will be on vacation. If you want to follow my vacation, follow me on Twitter.
Yes, it's exciting. Where are you going?
I'm going to the Maldives.
Can you take me too?
I can.
We'll stream from there.
Actually, that would be a good show. Streaming from the Maldives. I show live from the Maldives. I feel like I deserve this vacation because of Ignite, and I think you do too. Actually, you're also going to take a few days off, aren't you?
Yeah, I hope so. I already caught up on sleep. I had a record amount of sleep. I slept more than 18.5 hours one day, which was wow. I didn't even know I could do that. So, have you caught up?
I'm caught up. Yeah.
I'm
caught up.
Yeah. It's a very short demo, but it does take a long time for us, right? Because we are trying to make it as precise and as useful to the community as possible.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. I think making it shorter actually is a lot more work than making it longer because you want to demo, all the things that are important and nothing else. There's no room for things that aren't related to the message you're trying to pass across. So, but it was fun. I'm glad we did it.
Yeah. And give us your feedback too. If you have any, what else would you like to see in the next conferences? Because we're going to be working on the next one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And also in the next AI shows, right? Like if there's topics. And talking about next AI shows, what are we going to see in the next week?
Sorry, I had to remove us. How can I do this without, taking us? Okay, never mind. So see set next time for the AI show and aka.ms Learn TV, or you can sign up to the YouTube stream at aka.ms AI show live for the next one.
What is Seth going to be talking about?
I have to remove.
Manage online endpoints.
Yes, that's one of your favorite subjects.
That is one of my favorite subjects. Yes.
Why?
So maybe
what are they? Give us a short description.
Maybe I'll be watching from the Maldives because I don't want to miss. Yeah. So it's really just the ability. Not just. This is pretty amazing. Just the ability to query your trained models with an endpoint, with a, you can do an HTTP request, or there's other methods that you can use to query. But the idea that you can train your model and then make a prediction by making an HTTP request on that
were
model.
we able to do that before?
There were other methods, but this is like, we have like these two new endpoints that we're pushing that are like the ways of doing it now, which is managed on, actually three. There's managed online endpoints. There's Kubernetes online endpoints, which we saw today, which is just exactly the same thing as managed online, except they're not managed. You have to manage your own Kubernetes machine, right? And those are for like low latency requests. So like if you want, if you have like a prediction, you want to get a very quick answer back, like something, a one-liner or something like that, and you need it right now because you have an app or whatever that you user enters something and then you go to the server and then you want to have the answer back right away. So for that, then you would use managed online endpoints or Kubernetes online endpoints, depending on whether you want to manage your resources or have Azure manage your resources. And then the third one is batch endpoints, and I believe that we're going to have a show on that, an AI show on that. I think it's going to be a Seth show. Like I think so. Seth is going to host that one, and so the idea is that instead of getting your response back right away, you send a bunch of data, and then you get the response back later. Like if you're not in a hurry, and then you don't need the answer right away, then you do batch endpoints, and so yeah. And then in the future, there will be also Kubernetes batch endpoints where you can do the same thing, but on-premise or on a Kubernetes machine that you manage. But today we don't yet have that. So today we have 3 endpoints. Yeah.
And there are some advantages to batch, right? Doing it batch.
Yeah. So for example, if you're really not in a hurry, you can just use like a super, super slow machine, right? And then you save a little bit of money. And yeah, because why would you use a GPU if you're going to get the responses the next day and you don't care? So that would be one way why you do it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's really cool that there's a discount for
doing
batch.
Yeah. And to be honest, like you could use a slower machine on either endpoint, right? So you can those savings would work either way. But like if you're not in a hurry, then that becomes one more thing. You can use batch and you can use a slower machine, which is nice. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we are coming to the end of our show. Thanks everyone for joining, and don't forget to sign up for the next episode with Seth, learning about more ML. And thank you. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. See ya. See everyone. Bye.
Bye.